Hey team, welcome to Benchmarked, the leadership, coaching, and mental performance podcast with Coach Mess and Coach LaRock. Thanks for joining us. We're very excited to have Coach Kurt Hines with us today. Coach Hines is not only the head coach of the Coronado Islander football program in sunny Southern California, he's also a motivator, a speaker, and influencer. Most importantly, he's a father, a husband, and a grandfather. Coach Hines, I've been waiting to have this chance to converse with you for years. I think I've been a follower of yours now for 7 or 8 years, and just a huge fan. This is a huge treat for us. Thanks for taking the time to be on our show tonight.
I'm truly humbled to be here. It's you just mentioned a little bit off camera, so to speak, about the blessing of social media, and I'm a firm believer. There are so many people that downplay it and say it's negative, and I think it has opened up so many doors and connected so many lives in a beautiful way. So I'm humbled to be here and appreciate it. Appreciate it.
Well, going back to, I think my first follow of you was on Twitter, and I was like, this coach is what it's all about. And even though you're a football coach and you got a great career, none of your tweets are directly related to football, but you cover the very important aspects of life and sport, and especially as high school kids go and so on. And that's one of the things that drew me, because obviously being a football coach, it's important for me to be connected to the kids and be a leader. But to me, that's what I like. You're a motivator. And I've always said, man, if I had a son, I'd I'd get him down to to Coronado in California, so he could play for Coach Hines, because that's how inspirational you are, and I know you've made a big difference in a lot of people's lives. So this is going to be a great show.
Greatly appreciate that.
How did it? I'm gonna get going here, Mark, on some of this stuff. To get to the point, like where Mark says you're not speaking specifically to football. My personal opinion on stuff like that is you must have a good grasp on life when, you know, Mark and I talk about like we all do this amazing things, but like the sport we coach is just kind of the vehicle, because at the end of the day, we're trying to like grow human being and citizens. But we always look at ourselves like 1.0, 2.0, like, if I could have went back in time, I was terrible. I would yell and I would do this and I would do that. And I'm talking about last weekend. So, but I mean, at what point did you kind of separate yourself from football and more about people? I'm hoping I'm making that question make sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense, and I don't know if I ever have. And maybe it's because I often when I'm blessed to be able to speak at places, whether it's podcasts or at businesses or whatever, I somewhere in my conversation early on in the presentation, I often say I'm an expert, and I can see people like, all right, what are you an expert in? And I truly believe this. I'm an expert in absolutely nothing, but I'm passionate about most things. And for me, I've been blessed, and some of it's learned over the years from reading books, from learning from other great. I'm not saying I'm a great coach, but other great leaders and whatnot. But for me, the marriage, if you will, of sports and life have always been one. Have always been one. And I've got to give credit to coaches that, there's a saying that you don't remember what people say, but you remember how you feel when you're around them. I'm not that smart of a guy to come up with all of this, but I'm sure in my youth, I started playing football in second grade, played through college. I had coaches that poured into me as a human being. I had teachers that poured into me as a human being, more than just a player or more than just a student. And I'll make this quick, but one of the moments I'll never forget, I pray I never forget, was a seventh grade math class. And math has never been my strong suit, never. But I was sitting in class, and we had a math teacher, Mr. Nick, who would sit on his desk for 5 minutes or so every class and just talk about life, and just call on different players, or not players, people, and just ask about theater or dance or drama or football or baseball, you name it. And I remember sitting there in his seventh grade class thinking, I want to do that someday. I want to teach. And I was not a great student, but I just remember the connection and the way he made me feel as a human being. And it wasn't because I was some mathematician, far from it. But it just, and I do that now in my teaching of fourth grade, and I do it with my football players. I think the magic, if you will, the secret, which is no secret at all, is it's all about relationships. The more you pour into people because of who they are as human beings, the more you're going to get out of them, not for selfish gain, but it's just, I mean, let's face it, the three of us, this is the first time we've really, or not really ever, met, face to face. And I already I want to listen to your podcast now, and not mine, but I want to listen to your podcast with other guests. I think when you have a connection with people, when you can sit face to face with them, eye to eye, and learn from each other, that's what life is all about.
And we've been blessed because we've had people from, it didn't matter what sport. We've had professional lacrosse players, we've had professional football players, we've had Olympians, we've had people, just influential people, and it seems to all point back to
Yeah.
very similar things that you just mentioned: relationships, and there you build trust. So as good as a football coach, this is what I said. I've been following you for 7 or 8 years. I don't even know if you know how to run a spread offense or not, but I know you're really good with kids, right? That's, to me, is a super important aspect of it. And do you think, and I want to follow up with what JG was saying, is, do you think you would be as good of a motivator and leader if you weren't an educator? Does that kind of does one feed the other in your mind?
Absolutely, in my mind. Well, once again, I often say this is the gospel according to me. This is not fact. I do, and to tie into your question about the classroom and the sports, whatever football, whatever sports we coach. As educators, we know that so many of our students have IEPs or 504s, or they have certain accommodations that they need. That little Timmy or little Sally, whatever they are, that can't sit still. It's not that they're being punks. It's not that they're being rude. They just have a harder time doing X, Y, or Z. And I've coached with coaches before, and I've been blessed to coach with great coaches, and I've coached with jackwagon coaches that abuse kids, not physically, but
No, no.
in
I'm going to
another.
open that can shortly. Go ahead.
Yes, please. But I've always been so intrigued by coaches that just write kids off on the field and say, "Oh, he doesn't care. He's never paying attention." And when I've been blessed to be a head coach, I always tell our assistant coaches, "Listen, that baggage they have in the classroom doesn't leave when they enter the locker room and stay with them. It comes out to the field." So the kid that's the hardest to coach, the hardest to love, is often the one that wants and needs it the most. So I think having that educator mindset has helped me exponentially, because I understand, I believe my fourth graders and my high school student athletes are the exact same. And what I mean by that is, so many people that say, "Gosh, you teach elementary school, you coach high school football. How is that? There's two different worlds." I'm like, no, they want to be loved. They want to know that if they're not there, they're missed. They want to know that when they are there, they're heard. And I've had parents, and it's a blessing, but I've had parents over the 28 years, 27 years I've taught elementary school now, say, "Oh my gosh, Mason or Chase or whoever always hated math. Now they love it. They always hated reading. Now they love it." And I'm not that good of a teacher. It's just I build relationships with them where they don't want to disappoint me and they want to succeed. And then you see their eyes light up, and that aha moment where they're like, "I'm not dumb. I can do this. I can." And I love, in the weight room, I was on fire today because our players were on fire. We had kids achieving lifts and doing things they hadn't done before. And actually, it's funny, I did a video just before I went to the weight room, and I had to stop one of our players who's doing some power cleans. He's like, "Coach, I just can't get my elbows up just to come into the drop." And I said, "Logan, you can't." I said, "I'm going to step in front of you." I said, "Don't hurt me. Trust me. I'm just going to tap your elbows up a little bit." So he know what, I was standing right in front of him. He did it. I put my hands there. He achieved the lift that he thought he couldn't do. And we're yelling and screaming, hooting and hollering and stuff. I said, "How much did I help you?" He looks at me. I said, "I didn't do a dang thing, Logan. That was 100% you. You just didn't want to hurt me or let me down." I said, "That's you. That's just you." So I think, being an educator, you understand that the classroom doesn't leave them. And once again, you might lose some listeners here because I'm going to be a broken record, but it's about relationships. It's all about people.
I
Nobody
know.
listens anyways.
Yeah.
Well, you
Hey,
get a listener here.
our 5 listeners, I'm sure they're gonna love it. We always say, and this is, we're broken records too, because I think, I don't know, we're at like episode 20, and I feel like we're repeating ourselves because it just keeps circling. We always say the person is not the problem. The problem is the problem. We have to, as educators and coaches, always remember that. And I love it because, to me, I mean, the weight room, we're both strength coaches as well, JG and I, and that's why I think we connect well with you, is you can accomplish so much for an athlete in the weight room, because that's where they could start to build that confidence, and then like, "Hey man, I've achieved this," right? That self-esteem and all that stuff, which is such a cool aspect of it all. JG, you were leading to something else and I interrupted you.
Yeah, I'm all over the map on this one. But the other one was, they don't care what you know until you care what they know, right? That's the meat and potatoes of things.
Yep.
And I'm trying to deal with myself. I'm gonna pretend like the podcast is about me right now, but I get some stuff in my class where I think in my eyes, and I don't know what other people do in their classes, so I might be way off here, but I think I do some things, let's say outside the box. And I feel sometimes as though, if I have, let's just call them regular teachers that kind of just stay inside the box, that had been the same way for whatever amount of years, would come into my class and I would feel judged in the sense of the way things are running in my class, because it's not a typical health and physical education class, trust me. Sometimes I'm letting them sleep for 15, 20 minutes. I let a student like 3 weeks ago literally sleep the entire period because he hadn't been at school for 2 weeks. This is the first day he showed up. And in my head, when I saw him, he was tired. I said, go to bed. He's like looking at me like I was crazy, because I really felt like it was just the safest place he had been in 2 weeks.
Love that.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Go. I fired you up. Perfect. Go.
Yeah. So I love that stuff. And I'm gonna protect the innocent here. When I was teaching elementary school in New Hampshire, a woman who we shared a door, the classrooms connected. She came in one time and we were playing some math game. And afterwards she said, I don't know how you do it because we never have time for that fun stuff. And I said, and I almost said her name. I'm like, we've got to make it fun for them. We've got to, not to dumb it down. I hate that term. I said, but we got to make it fun. So I kid around with my fourth graders now. I'm like, we don't play any games in here. I tell them the first day of school. They're like, oh. I said, we play a lot of educational activities. It's the same dang thing. But we do most of our math in fourth grade on whiteboards, and
like they have their own whiteboards.
Yeah, little handheld whiteboards.
Yeah.
Traditional, we're doing the same dang work they're doing in the workbook, but for them it's just different. When they make a problem, I had the kids write down the problem on the board, they copy it down so no one else can see it. I say, show me, and they show me, and I can look real quick. And then if they make a mistake when it's on paper, it's a big red X and they feel horrible. Now, then they, like you just did, they just erase it. Yeah. It's a clean slate, literally and figuratively. I'm making notes on my class roster about, hey, I got to see so-and-so, make sure I go over this with them. But it's no different. And when you mentioned the box, Gigi, I think how many of us our entire lives try to kick and fight and scream our way out of a box that society or parents, best of intentions, whatever, try to put us in. And if we would just let people just not do their own thing. There's certain times they gotta show up and do the things they don't want to do. But that box that so many people feel comfortable in, I think often it's a box that teachers or coaches put themselves in because they're lazy or ignorant. And I think,
convenient.
Convenient. I'm just going to keep doing this because this is just easy. Yeah. I'm just going to keep doing this, and someone suggests something new. And now I've always done it that way. And I hate when I hear that. We've always done it that way. And unless you've always done it that way and it's always producing winners in the classroom, in life, in the field, and stop doing it that way.
Doing more of what doesn't work doesn't make it work any better, right? Amen. So these are all things that I think, and again, I always say you could take a good coach and you could put them in any classroom and you could probably teach 12th grade physics, but you could also probably coach cricket and badminton. To me, people are like, oh, how do you do that? And it's like, it's not magical. It goes back to relationships build trusts, and trust allows you to open up the whole thing for the success of the kid, the athlete, whether it is, and then they'll be successful in life. These are all. So I want to go back. How did you get started? How did you get started on the path, not of being the motivator and being the speaker, the Twitter stuff, and then because you're one of the few people. One of my friends says you gotta be careful on Twitter because it's a cesspool out there, and you gotta filter out the noise. But I always look forward to your tweets because it's something that's uplifting, and I point a lot of people to them as well to say hey, the answers are there. Right. And sometimes what I find is you put just enough out to make you think about, I know I had a list of things. I was like, oh, I got to mention this tweet. I got to mention this post. And then I was like, I'm going to get them all jumbled up. But the answer is there. And the way you put them out, I find you can fit so many, not just football lessons, but life lessons that you could self-correct, or you can help yourself kind of help others. I think that's another big thing is you're empowering, which is I think a huge thing for football coaches. And I know that leadership, and we see it up here in Canada, I find leadership in young people is something that's kind of on a decline. because they're afraid to do it because it's a risk, right? Especially for males. We need strong male role models in this world, and I love that you're doing that. So back to my question, how did you get started on this path doing this and sharing what you're doing?
uh, I think most husbands would admit this. It goes back to my wife. I being an
Yeah.
elementary school teacher, and I paint murals. I painted for years. Love art. Facebook and Instagram were easy for me because I could share my artwork. Twitter, I had no interest in whatsoever in the first 4, 5, 6 years it came out. My wife, who comes to all of my games, and back in New Hampshire, here in California, she'll come to the games on the away games. She's home watching the sports breakdown before I'm even leaving to visit the locker room. So she's the one that said, "Hey, just get on Twitter and just you can follow these certain sports guys to find." I would call her on the way home and say, "Hey, who won this game or who won that game?" Trying to find out standings. So she's the one that pushed me towards Twitter a little bit. And then I'm not proud to admit this, but someone my first few months in Twitter had copy and pasted or whatever one of my tweets and just shared it. Didn't give me credit for it, whatever. And not that that's a big deal. I should be more mature than that, but I'm not. So I remember thinking one time, like, you know what, I'm going to do a video. You know, they could still share, they could still say words, but it'll be them sharing the video. And it happened to resonate with a lot of people. Um, and then it's funny. I remember I was sitting on I was sitting on the toilet, to be honest. The day before we left New Hampshire to drive across the country to come to California, and I was sitting on my phone just scrolling, and the number, I don't know why it stuck out to me. It was 1,888 people that followed me. And I was like, why do that many people care what I had to say? Um, and then it just started to grow from there. But I do want to share. Do either of you gentlemen know Inky Johnson?
Yep,
Okay.
I know
So,
of them.
so,
Yeah.
so GJ, he can fill you in. He played college football, was projected to go to the NFL, had a career-ending injury, and I believe it's his right arm. I could be wrong. He had some paralysis, something happened to his back where his right arm is like the size of a pen, tiny. It changed completely changed his life trajectory, and is now a motivational speaker. And this guy is unbelievable. I have yet to meet him in person, but if Inky ever hears this, thank you. He's inspired me, motivated me. Love the guy. Love the guy. The reason I bring him up was um, when I first started getting asked to speak at different places. I remember having these doubts and thinking, I'm not Inky Johnson. I was never going to the NFL. I was never that good. I don't have this life altering story. I wasn't raised in poverty. I was never beaten as a child. I'm just an average guy. So I started to really doubt myself. And a buddy of mine shared something that Wayne Dyer, a famous author and motivational speaker from years ago, I think he's passed away, but I think he, lived till his 80s or whatever. He talked about ego. And the way he phrased it was ego. And I always thought ego was that cocky, arrogant coach or player that thought they were better than others. And he mentioned ego being anytime we ego, edge God out. And he went on to say in one of his books, if God has opened a door for you, if he's opened a path for you, stop questioning why that's open for you. Just go through it. I'm paraphrasing, and he said it much more eloquently. But that's so I got started in Twitter and sharing things through my wife pushing me out there. And then it was, hey, you know what? If God's opened doors to speak, I was asked to speak for Fidelity Investments one time to a lot of their leaders. And I got a private message on Twitter about a year before COVID. You know those emails we get where it's some guy that says, "Hey, I'm from Nigeria. I want to give you money. Just give me your bank account," and we just delete. I got a private message from some guy. Said, "Hey, we want to fly you out to the Bahamas to speak for our company," and right away I almost clicked delete because I'm like, A, who am I, and B, who's going to fly me to the Bahamas? So I messaged him back and said, "Hey, appreciate the interest. Just email me at my business account." Thought I'd never hear from him. 20 minutes later, I get an email saying, "Hey, when can we set up a meeting?" So they flew my wife and I out there. It was unbelievable. But I was humble enough to ask them, and curious enough. I said, I have confidence to know who I am as a man, as a husband, father, grandfather, coach. But I'm a Division 4 coach here in San Diego, California. Why me? And he said, all of our business leaders are either former athletes, and if they're not, they're in the competitive world now as business leaders, and they want to hear from someone like you, gentlemen, who's doing it, who's living it, and in that world day in and day out. So when I started sharing stuff on social media, it really got to the point where I was like, you know what? I pray you use the word empower. That's my why in life. I want to empower as many people as I can, but I pray that it reaches more people than I can ever imagine. And if I share one message, one video, one tweet, that, as you mentioned, makes one person think a little bit different with how they're interacting with their wife or their teammate or their player or athlete or son or daughter, then the message is well served. It doesn't have to get 2, 3, 4 retweets. If one person likes it and it makes them think a little bit more, then that's what I love about it.
I think we had the same thing, and we can relate. AJG, we're like, who's gonna listen to us? Who's gonna actually like hit subscribe? And we's like, we don't care. If
Yeah.
one person listens and one person, if it moves the needle a little bit in their life in a positive way, we've truly been successful. And that's
Yeah.
what we're after. And we bring in guests that are after the same goal, like their why.
Yeah. And what I love about that, I have a biased opinion about the sport of football, obviously in favor of it. But I also at the same time think the sport is overpopulated with negative Neanderthal dumb jock coaches who know the game really well, who can break down any defense or offense, the spread offense. We do run that. Who know it far better than I do, to be honest. There's a lot of coaches out there, probably thousands of them that know thousands and thousands that know the game better than me, but don't care enough about the people who either don't have the longevity to stay in coaching or do, but for all the wrong reasons. And once again, the world needs more people that just want to spread what they're passionate about and do it in a way that's going to only bless other people. So I love that you guys are doing this. Yeah.
I had two things, Mark. Sorry.
Yep.
So one, I want to talk about the why. I'll get that in a second. But the first thing, you talked about art, how you liked art earlier, correct?
Yes, sir.
So I can't remember which book or podcast or whatever I was listening to, but they just talked about a lot of professional people, high end, let's just say high end people, also get interests in other things. Okay. So obviously, I'm stereotyping here. I'm not figuring you as an art person, but one, why art and what does it do for you outside? Like, just for listeners at the same time, like you can be really good at something else, but it's beneficial to be going to do other things too, to kind of complete yourself as a person, in my opinion, anyways. But how did you get it? Like, what's the story with art?
Yeah, it was always a passion of mine. Growing up, I used to doodle and draw all the time. Probably why I wasn't so good at math. I spent more time drawing in class than I should have been. Um, it was my minor in college, but like most things, what you learn in college may help you, but until you get into the actual
Yeah.
profession you're doing, you learn so much more that first 6 months or year. Um, and just started doing murals years ago, and I've done murals now on 500 square foot walls, outside, inside, ceilings, you name it. Everything from custom sports things to Monet or Van Gogh or just whatever the client asks me to do. And I love it for multiple reasons. One, it's so relaxing. I love, you guys know this, teaching. I don't care what class, what grade level. We have to be on our A game.
Oh man,
all day. Coaching is the same thing. And when I coach, I yell and I scream. It's never derogatory. It's never putting someone down. It's just I get amped up. That's how I am. When I'm doing a mural, I put some. I love all genres of music from AC/DC to Killswitch Engage, but I love worship music. So I put that on, and I'm in my own world. The last thing I love about it is my players. They see me when they meet me for the first time. I'm not huge, but I'm not a small guy. But they eventually find out I teach elementary school. I love painting murals, and that you can be someone that loves and is passionate about your sport. But I think when they have a coach that is passionate and successful in other things as well, it helps them to not put their identity in being an athlete. And we know how dangerous that is for so many. You see so many professional athletes, who are at the top of their game, making millions and millions of dollars, who battle with depression, who take their lives or end up losing all their money, and who, once they leave that game, they always saw themselves as being that too connected to that sport. Where I love football. It is so much of my life, but it's not my life. It's a part of it.
I
you
think
talked
that's
about what about
no.
Hillsong United? Please tell me you listen to
Yes,
Hillsong United.
absolutely.
And
I just showed. I teach my religion class today, and it was a 2-day. So I showed them the video that there's a movie on Hillsong United. So I'm doing a section of my religion class about music, and a lot of them have God meaning, and you don't even know. And anyways, so I showed them the movie Hillsong United. But that's the best music ever. When I'm working out, I'm doing my stuff, I'm listening to that. It's just like a whole new world about Hillsong United.
So I love this. I'm getting no money for this. I wish I were. But have you guys heard of Tasha Cobbs?
No.
Please write this down. Truly write this down. Tasha Cobbs, or you guys can watch this and go back. She just came out with a song, or I just found it. I'm not sure how long it's been out. with Nicki Minaj. Nothing against Nicki Minaj, but I'm not a Nicki Minaj fan. Tasha Cobbs is this woman who has such a powerful voice. The song is called "I'm Getting Ready" by Tasha Cobbs and Nicki Minaj. At 2 minutes and 44 seconds into it, it goes from awesome, awesome, awesome to it just explodes to like I can't even tell you what happens, but you have to listen to that song and listen to
Okay.
it loud. Love it,
Okay.
love it.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah,
And I know you like country music because you were just
yes,
in
sir.
Nashville.
Great time.
So, like JG, I know you're talking about the art stuff. So one of my, and we're going to have him on the show next. Actually, we're doing the show with him on Tuesday. He was a football player, and I knew him as a football player since he was a freshman in high school, and we trained together, and we've been training together for the last 20 years. He's almost 30 now, so it's well, 15 years for sure. And he went and played. He was a freshman at Western University here and played 3 years and had ankle issues and just had to have surgery on his ankle. His football career ended. And I did not know this of him. And this is what taught me, like, I'm always evolving. I didn't know he played the guitar and sang. And now he just signed a big contract with Universal Records and is living in Nashville and is recording music and he's doing great.
That's
So,
awesome.
like I said, Josh, I didn't even know you could sing. I know you could deadlift 300 pounds for 5 reps and you can run a 440, but I didn't know you can sing and play the guitar.
Yeah,
So, these are all things that I think it's important that they know that you're not just a football coach and that
Yeah.
you're not just an athlete because you're a complete person, because that sport can stop for you one day. What are you going to keep doing? What's your other why, right?
yeah.
And I want to go back to something else you said, something we've saying. I've seen this, and I think this was another thing that we also do seminars for coaches here, and we've had a couple, and what we say is not all successful coaches win, right? And not all winning coaches are good coaches. So I could be gifted a super talented team and have all the right tools in my toolbox, but I'm not serving those kids, and I'm not advancing them as players and we'll use football here and as men. We're not doing our job. So I love that you recognize that and you know that your strength as a motivator and a leader. I'm sure you know football. I'm sure you know your offenses and your defenses and stuff like that. But it's that extra layer that you add. In fact, I was in New York a couple of months ago on the USA Today. They were talking about the transfer portal, and I think there's a lot of coaching changes that were going on in like the Power Five. And what they were talking about now is how they're really looking at the bigger schools to not necessarily hire the genius OC or the genius DC or the genius head coach. They're looking to bring in people who can recruit good people and work with those troubled young men and make them better, because we know that makes a big difference. Like the talent pool is so deep in football. It's how do you now bring that good culture. Culture is one of our key words here is establishing team culture. So
Like, I'm gonna jump in there. So, okay, if people are doing that, and Kurt, I just get your insight on this. If people are doing that, but you have to be willing to lose. If you're gonna do that, you're bringing in good people, because we think good people, maybe we're thinking they're soft or whatever the case may be. You're bringing character people in, but you have to be willing to lose. So, Kurt, was there a point in your coaching career, whatever, it's like you didn't know what the wins and losses were going to look like? You're like, this is the path we're going to follow. Like, at what point in your career did you get to, this is the path we're going to follow, win or lose, because this is the right way of doing it?
Yeah, it was my first year as head coach, to be honest with you. I was blessed. My first 8 years, I walked onto a staff, and I was looking to be a volunteer to do whatever, just get my foot in the door. And it just so happened they wanted a head freshman coach, and they needed a spot. So I got a paid position right away. Failed a lot, messed up a lot, but learned a lot along the way. My first year as head coach, it was Bedford, New Hampshire, a very affluent community, and they said, "Hey, coach, it's a brand new high school. If you get the job, how long before you're in the playoffs?" And I don't consider myself cocky. I really don't. But without hesitation, I said 3 to 5 years. And both the principal and the AD laughed at me, not in a malicious way, but they both laughed. I remember that. And I thought two things right away. I thought, game on, like, I'm going to prove you wrong. And then I thought, oh crap, I just lost this job. I may not have got this. So I go into my first year coaching, and I joke about this when I speak at places. I tell people I set records my first year as a head coach. And you can see some people like, oh, interesting. Some people are like, all right, who's this arrogant guy? The records I set was we got our teeth kicked in more than any other school in the history of the world playing football. It was so bad that we, at the end of the game, when you walk through and shake hands and everyone says good game, no one even lied to me. They were like, beautiful field, great stadium. We were so bad. They didn't even lie to me. But it was at the end of that first year, a meeting I'll never forget. It was my first year as a head coach. We literally just got done with our first season and lost every game. It wasn't like, hey, week 2 was close. Like every game was a massacre, bad. And I asked our coaching staff, I said, I'm not going to change just for the sake of it, but I'm in this for the long haul. What would you like to see me do differently? And it was quiet for about 40 seconds.
Sorry, you said this to who?
To our coaching staff.
Okay.
Yeah, at the end of our season. And it was about 40 seconds of silence, seemed like 40 minutes. And one of my assistant coaches, who is now one of my best friends, but those first few years we butt heads like this, he said, I don't think the kids respect you. And the room just went like deathly silent. And all eyes were on me, and I felt myself just getting red. And I was like, all right, what do you mean? He's like, I don't know, Hines. They just don't respect you. I was like, well, give me one example. Do they talk back? Do they leave the locker room a mess, the weight room? Do they show up late or leave early and, talk behind my back? He said, no, none of that stuff. He goes, kids love you. I don't think they respect you. So what are you talking about? I said, give me one example. And he goes, that's not the right word. I said, what is it? He goes, they're not afraid of you. And I talk about the spirit. I felt such a peace come over me. And I said, those are two completely different things. He's like, right, but I think a head coach should be feared. You're too buddy with him. I said, do you think I'm trying to be best friends with him? He goes, no, but you're telling me you love him, you're hugging him. I said, I will always be that way because that is how we're going to win. And he's like, we just lost every game. I'm like, I'm not talking about winning on the friggin' scoreboard. I remember getting heated. I'm like, I'm talking about winning in life. And I said, I'll mention his name because Derek. I mean, I'm going to his house tomorrow night. My wife spends the weekend with them. So
if we get a bad comment on this, Coach, we know who it's going to be from.
Yes. It'll be from Derek. But he goes, well, we're going to disagree. I said, 100%. I said, I love you. I said, I will always disagree with you on that. I said, if the kids fear me and they're suicidal, get a young woman pregnant, parents are getting divorced, coming out of the closet, whatever challenges they're going through in life, they're not going to come to me. I said, I don't want them to fear me. I want them to know I love them, and I want them to love me enough to know that they can come to me with anything. So it was that first year, to answer your question, that it's a huge blessing for me to find success differently. Yeah, I truly don't think in the 25 years I've coached now, I've coached with a losing season. Now, that being said, I've had years we've lost every game. I've had years we've only won 2. It depends on how you define success. And I think this really pisses off a lot of coaches because like, oh, this is fluffy and all that foo-foo stuff. And yes, we have to win games to keep our job. At a certain, even at the elementary Pop Warner level, there's enough parents today's day and age that, or even when we were kids, they're going to say something. Yes, I hate losing games. Yes, I want to win. And I've been blessed as a head coach and an assistant to win state championships, division championship, league championships. But my definition of success is, are our kids academically eligible? Do they come to me with problems when they're going through life stuff? Am I able to meet with them? And for that reason alone, I don't feel like I've had a losing season if you look at the big picture of what my why is, if that makes sense.
You're preaching to the choir here because the very first day, so 2 things I do because I coach our varsity team, I'm the DC, and these guys hear it every August, and we start in August our preseason camp, and I tell them, but as the AD, I go and I talk to the freshman class and I say, you're going to win championships here. Like, our program is successful here. We've won national championships. We've won provincial championships. We run a successful program. But I always say to every kid that comes in, if you leave here in 4 years and you're a jerk, we are complete and utter failures as coaches and teachers and educators. So the football stuff takes care of itself here. But if you're a jerk, I'm not a good coach. So that we make that very clear. And I repeat that as they go into the 10th grade and the 11th grade and the 12th grade. And to me, it's those relationships, and then seeing, and JG and I, we talk about this all the time. He's got athletes that are doing great things, is they're giving back to their communities, and they're coaching now, and they're doing different things. And to me, that's successful. And I know you have former athletes that are playing D1 and they're playing in the pros and in the NFL, and it's just like, that's an amazing accomplishment, but they're also good people at the same time.
And amen. And just, it's not any better, but what I tell our coaching staff, what I tell our families and our players, is if the only thing we do is help you become better football players, we're failing you miserably. Every time they come to the weight room, I want to help them get better at their deadlifts, at their squats, at their cleans, you name it. But I want to help them become better human beings. And that is what gets me jacked up the most. I just hired 6 new coaches this past off season. I had one coach that got a divorce and had to move, one coach that was engaged and his fiance broke it off. So that's why I lost 2 coaches. I was like, all right, I got to find 2 coaches. Put it out there. I had a lot of people interested. And it was blessed to hire 6 coaches. My first interview, I used to interview coaches and talk about football for about an hour and a half and then make a decision. And then into the season, I'd be like, man, this guy knows football, but he doesn't know people, doesn't care about people. Yeah, I just hired a lot of good football coaches, but not good football people, if that makes sense.
Yep.
And now what I do when I first meet with coaches is we talk. I try for that first 45 minutes or so to talk about everything except for football. And you can see them kind of like, all right, when's this interview going to start? And then if I have a good sense, what I usually say for the second interview, and I don't tell them where my mind's going with this, but I'll say, hey, can you come by the weight room next Wednesday or whatever it is? And they're like, sure. What do you want me to do? I'm like, whatever you want. They're like, what? I said, you can just sit back and be a fly in the wall. You can work out with the guys. Because I feel like every coach, every sport across the world has the interview answers. I want to give back. I want to make a difference. Everyone says that until the proverbial crap hits the fan in a practice or a game. And you're like, whoa, this is not who he said he or she said they were. So when I have them come in the weight room, and I'm always trying to work out with the guys and spot them. And you guys, I'm preaching to the choir, but I'm always watching in the mirror also. And I've had coaches that say, hey, I just want to give back. I just want to make a difference. And they gravitate toward the 6'3", 220-pound stud and walk right by this kid or that kid or whatever. And I watch them for the hour and a half, 2 hours we're in there, and they don't even pay a cent notice to the young man that can't put his shoes on or he's deadlifting 65 pounds or whatever.
Yeah, but that's not going to help them progress in their lives, coach.
Right. Yeah. Right. So what I do though is there have been a handful of coaches where I'll pull aside after that and say, hey, listen, I noticed this. I still think you've got enough good in you to keep moving forward with this process, but wasn't a fan of this. But I've had other coaches that come in right away, and the coaches I hired now that come into the weight room with us, who you just see gravitate toward the kids that need extra help, gravitate toward the kids that need the little guidance and stuff. And I love that because that's what it's all about.
But that's the roll up your sleeves and have to work hard, to be honest
Yeah.
with you. Like it's
Yes,
those
sir.
type, it's easy to go to 6'3", 240. He's probably doing stuff at home and parents did something, wherever the case may be, but to go to work and find that's coaching. That's a grind.
Yeah.
GG, I'm gonna get this wrong, but this came up to us from Brian Kane, one of our mentors as well in the mental performance realm, and he said, and I forget, it's one of the big schools in Texas, one of the head coaches of Texas football, and he said our program is a leadership and character development program that just happens to play football.
Amen.
Right. And I was just like,
Yeah.
oh my God, that's it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have those words painted on our weight room. So, these are the things that I think are important. And like you said before, a lot of people are missing the boat on this because they don't get what's really truly important. And when you say when the poop hits the fan, when that kid comes in and he's thinking of suicide, he's got mental health issues. And this is where I want to go back to the tweet that you went viral for about the young man that came into your office to quit. So can you talk to our listeners about that and how do you get ready for were you ready for that situation to happen?
No, not at all. I'll paint a very quick picture. 2 brothers played for us. One was a stud, one was not. Both great kids. The older brother by 1 year was just a light of the world, always smiling, always happy, everything. His younger brother by a year always showed up to practice a little bit late, not really there, was never really focused. I knew because I did as an educator, thought, all right, he's probably got some stuff going on that just is a little bit out of his realm of control, so to speak. He came to me one time about 5 minutes before practice, well, about 20 minutes before practice. And I always tell our young men, like, football is not for everyone. But when you decide to quit, if you do it the right way. Don't say you want to focus on your grades, because no one goes home at 4:30 and does schoolwork from 4:30 to 8:30. I always did better academically during the season because I had less time to fool around. So I say, when you decide it's not for you, if that happens, wash your gear, come in with it folded, hand it to me, shake my hand, look me in the eye and say, Coach, I'm just not passionate about it. So he came in one day and stuff had his bag washed and folded. And he goes, I'm just, it's not for me, Coach. And I said, I'm proud of you. And he looked at me. And I said, do you have a minute? So I said, sit down. And I said, what's going on? Like, what's in your heart right now? And he proceeded to say, we've always been a football family. My dad loves it. My mom loves it. My brother loves it. Da, 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 da. We. I said, what about you? He said, Coach, I don't like football. I said, good, I'm proud of you then. And I just saw him literally do this. It was the first time in 2 years I coached the young man. I just saw him smile. And he goes, Coach, I thought you were going to be so mad at me. And I said, then I failed you because no, I care about you as a human being far more than I'll ever care about you as a player. So I was so proud of him. And I said, hey, I was at that point, it was about 5 minutes before practice. I said, do you mind if I share this with you? He goes, no, Coach, please share with the team. Because I wanted to make sure the team still treated him like a teammate when they saw him in the locker room or in the cafeteria or the hallways or whatever. And I was so proud of him because, a lot of, and I had a tremendous support in that tweet. I did, as you mentioned, did go viral. But there were also people, I forget what I worded it, but, just had a young man quit and I'm so happy or something like that. That people were like, you're a horrible coach. You should be fired. How dare you be happy? And they didn't watch the video. And then there were people that watched the video and said, well, congratulations. You just taught him it's okay to quit.
Oh
And I
boy.
thought, no, I mean, how many of us dated other young women before we married our wife? I didn't quit on them. They just weren't right for me and vice versa.
Yeah.
How many of us have had different jobs over the years that we chose to walk away from for a better opportunity or something we were more passionate about?
Yeah.
And I think too many people live our lives trying to please others, please our parents or please so-and-so. And we end up being 30, 40, 50, 60 years old going, man, I've been on this planet for 50 years. I haven't lived a single day for myself. And I'm not saying we shouldn't bless and empower other people, but I was so proud of him. And I just still to this day, I made sure to keep in touch with him and have continued to. I just think it's a beautiful thing when you can have someone look you in the eye and say, I'm not passionate about this anymore, and be supported in that.
And the flip side, I always like to do this. If it would have flipped, and you're not the type of person that would have done this, but there are coaches who would have said, you don't quit. You never quit.
Yeah.
And just driven misery into that young man. And now disappoint, like that's where if you just make one small choice, we say things happen for you, not to you. And that opportunity that young man took to sit with you and talk was probably a life-changing moment for him.
Amen. And it was hard for him. He didn't know coming into it. And I can't tell you, I literally think it was over 200 people had sent me private messages saying, you have no idea the damage my coach did to me when I tried to quit, wouldn't let me or bullied me or told me I was a loser, told me I'd never amount to anything. And it's some of them, they were like almost hard to believe that actually happened. But as far as the quitting thing too, I remember one time, my first year here at Coronado as head coach, we were doing some conditioning in the summer. And I just, the kids were just working hard. And some kids were quitting, not the team, but quitting, pushing themselves. And that's different, in my opinion. And I said, guys, at the end, I pulled them in. I said, quitting is not, and they go, an option. I said, quitting is not, and they go, an option. And so that's where I was going with it. After the third time, I'm like, guys, hold on. You're friggin' wrong. Quitting is always an option. The world is full of quitters. Take pride in the fact when you don't quit, something you're passionate about, when you don't quit. With this young man that chose to quit, it wasn't that he didn't want to work hard. He just never loved football and was doing it for his family, which, I was and still am so proud of him.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I'm going to turn it around a little bit. I don't know if I'm turning around. Sometimes I feel as though the kid or the athlete needs the sport more than the sport needs them. Right? So that obviously is not the scenario, but have you taken players on your teams before, or you've seen that in an athlete where if they're not on this team end, God knows where this is going to take them, what direction they're going to go in life. So yeah, they're not my starting, whatever the case may be, but they need this family. They need this team.
Yes, 100%. Matter of fact, I just had a conversation with two of our assistant coaches about another coach. And I said, hey, this doesn't leave this room. I said, I'm not talking negatively about so-and-so, but I said exactly what you just said. I said, Coach so-and-so is like that player that we know will never start for our JV. Forget about our varsity. And I'm a huge believer in the underdog. I'm a huge believer in achieving the impossible. But we have some players. I have a player that's going to be a junior this year. I will not say his name, that cannot deadlift successfully. I think he was trying to do 85, 95 pounds, whatever. I mean, there are fifth graders that can do that, but I love the young man. That young man needs our program. I have a coach on our staff who he's going through a lot of stuff, has been for years in his own personal life with his family, his wife and children. he needs to be a part of our program. So
Yeah.
I absolutely, I love that because my wife and I, we went to Nashville this past spring. After our Nashville trip, we went further back to New Hampshire and Rhode Island, Massachusetts to see family and friends. And I had a former player that met up to see my wife and I, and he's a young man. He's on the spectrum, a little bit Asperger's. Um, I coached him. He graduated. Gosh, I coached him. I think it was 15 years ago, whatever it was. He just bought his own house. He's working as
Awesome.
a lawn care guy for a golf course. And I mean, it literally brought tears to my eyes when I saw him and I hugged him. I was like, oh my gosh, I won't say his name, so proud of you. I mean, but he's a young man that got in for us on his senior year during senior night. And literally, he was one of the players that I think it was a Thursday before the Friday night game. I pulled aside 3 or 4 of our defensive studs. I said, hey, listen, we're putting so and so in, and we're not going to put him in at the end of the game just for some, whatever reps. We're going to put him in the first quarter, put him in a little bit in the second quarter, maybe 2 or 3 plays throughout the entire game. And you guys, I don't care if they score, protect him. Like, you guys be his bodyguard, so to speak. And they did. And those kids, those young men who now have families of their own, or some of them, just they were as excited about that conversation I had with them as I was talking about a pregame. Hey, we're going to go to war with this team or whatever, because they also were buying what we were selling as far as this is about people. It's about making a difference. So absolutely, coach, having players that won't ever help us win a game, but are going to help the other young men and young women win more in life because they have compassion and love for someone else.
Service over status. We've said
Yes.
it before. The other one I wanted to touch on, I know JG's one. I could see it in his eyes right now. He's scanning. There's a lot there. The other one that I like about is because the one that were like, coach doesn't like me, or he plays favorites, and I know that's one of your favorite tweets, is where you talk about, like, if you think coach is playing favorites, become one of his favorites.
Yeah.
So I love that you also put responsibility on the athlete a lot, because we do as much as we can as coaches and teachers and parents, but at some point you have to take responsibility, that extreme ownership, whether it be in the weight room, conditioning, the classroom, all that stuff. How do you communicate that on a daily basis to your players?
First and foremost, by living it ourselves, holding ourselves as coaches accountable, and making sure we're challenging ourselves and pushing ourselves. Um, I think it goes back to having those conversations with our teams. I think one of the biggest cop outs in life, you mentioned our world needs more strong male leaders. Cannot agree with that more, especially in today's day and age. That being said, I hate when I hear husbands or fathers or coaches say about their families or players, they know I love them. I don't need to say it. Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do need to say it, because that tough love you think you're giving them is coming across completely different. Gigi, when you mentioned, coach, that you had a young man come to your class and you said, hey, go sleep. That probably is gonna, and I know I'm preaching to the choir, that's probably gonna benefit him and bless him more than anything you could have had him do in 4 years in your class, just knowing how, wow, this person sees me, sees my needs. I think we communicated just by having those conversations. You mentioned the player that you had coached and trained for years that is now in Nashville and making something of himself in the music world. I love during the workouts, it's during the season, we know how tough it is. We have a practice schedule and it's regimented to the minute. We got, hey, you got 10 minutes indies here, you got 20 there if we're lucky, whatever. During the off season, I love going to the weight room, and it's important to have assistant coaches that will help you in the weight room, because sometimes I do nothing but spot players and coach you up and help them. Sometimes I'll say to our coaching staff, hey guys, I need you to step up big today, because I'm just going to go lift with these 2 players. And during the lifts there, just conversations, how's life going? What's going on with your girlfriend? What's going on with this, or what's going on with that? And just communicating you mentioned extreme ownership. I had a chance to go with my son and hear Jocko speak here in San Diego one
Man.
time.
Oh, nice.
It was cool. He's amazing. And then literally 2 days later, my wife and I went to the beach, and we're getting in my truck, and we look up to our right where we're parked, and there's this beautiful house, and he's standing on the deck there, with some wedding party. As a 13-year-old schoolgirl, I wanted to be like, Jocko, and just I didn't. I resisted the urge, but I was like, oh. And he would look to me and be like, who are you? Truly, as he should. But no, I think the extreme ownership is, it's so easy for all of us when life doesn't go our way to point fingers at someone else and blame someone else. But that gets us nowhere, ever. ever.
That goes back to the blame, complain, defend, right? Like that's another one that we talk about, like, and that's Brian Knight. It's just like blame,
Yes.
complain, defend, because it's easy. And
Hmm.
that's why this our next episode coming out this week is all about growth mindset instead of fixed mindset, and these are all things that we talk about on a regular basis on our show, and it seems like we're repeating ourselves. We may lose listeners, but it's not complicated, is it? We're
Right.
and we say, like, you're referring to a lot of the coaches who aren't supporting kids. They're not supporting their families and tell them, hey, I appreciate you, I love you, keep doing this, is great, no matter what you do or whatever happens, but you've got my trust, right? Like, there's not enough of that, and they're not listening to our show because they don't think they need that, right? So
Right.
that's how do we get that message out to those folks, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I think, sorry, I think to the Twitter world, social media is, I really think it mirrors. I think there's a lot of keyboard warriors, and it's a lot easier and safer for people to sit back and type stuff that they would never say to anyone's face. But at the same time, I, I I mentioned this earlier, but our messages, even when we sound like a broken record to ourselves, it's needed in this world. People need to hear it, and I think the great majority of people want to hear it. We just need to keep doing what we're doing. You know, just keep putting positivity out there.
Those of you who are not watching the show, you should, 'cause we're beautiful three men, beautiful bald heads here.
Preach.
But those of you just listening, I was laughing the whole time Kurt was talking earlier because it's funny to see another individual do the same type of thing we do, like Mark and I. In this sense here, that's why I was laughing, because you're kind of praise some of the stuff I said, and then you go to Mark and he's praising some of the stuff Mark said. I'm like, this guy's doing the Jedi mind trick. Like, but it was also amazing because I can see you're preaching what you do, because you're treating this, I'm assuming, like you would your players, your coaching staff. So it's just like you're listening what's happening, you're engaging the conversation, you're remembering things. And I can totally see, how you're presenting that to your athletes, to your wife, your grandchildren, whatever the case may be. So yeah, um, awesome.
I
Mark, I'm so
appreciate that.
happy you line this up, man. I'm like a kid right now just listening to this stuff.
And it's funny you talk about taking the time to talk to players, because when JG and I coach together, I love being his assistant coach because I see him scrambling, doing lineups, and he's just pros and he's dialed in, and I'm like talking to the kids like, "Hey man, how you doing? This is great. I'm so proud of you."
Terrible, terrible.
But it's hard. And like you say, you're dialed in, and you're dialed into the game, so you're not getting that. But you have to find those moments. And I know, I'm reading this book right now. It's called Team Chemistry, and it's these guys. They say, like, they're national team coaches, and when they're traveling with their team, they do breakfast with the coaches. So they pick 2 or 3 athletes to have breakfast, and then they don't talk about the sport. They just talk about everything else. So
I had
just
that in college because I did something wrong. So the coach is like, you're sitting in front with me.
that was
We're having
conditioning. That was
breakfast
conditioning. That was
together. I
conditioning.
had nothing to do with wanting to know how my life was going.
Uh,
If I can share one thing that just came to my heart, it's one way I've definitely matured as a coach myself over the years was I have stopped taking people's first answers as their final answer. What I mean by that is I would ask players, "Hey, how you doing in school? Good, coach. Great." And then grades would come out. I'm like, "Whoa, what happened?" Like, and now when I say, "Hey, how are your grades? Great, coach." I said A's and B's, and they go, like, so you have 1 C? They're like. So I was like, we have a different definition of great. Like,
yeah.
so dig a little bit deeper. When I ask a player so often, they're like, "Hey, how you doing?" "I'm good." And I'll look at them and be like, "What's the matter?" They're like, "Good." I'm like, "Why aren't you great?" And they're looking at me like, "You're healthy. The sun's shining. We're in the weight room right now. We're on the football field. What's going on in your life?" And
Ugh.
trying to dig deeper. And here's what I love about it. I think way too many coaches, and not that I'm better than other coaches. I often say when I'm speaking at places, and I believe this to my core, there's not a greater coach out there than me. There's not a greater coach. And people get defensive with that. And I immediately say, listen, I'm not saying I'm better than anyone else. I don't think there's someone greater than me. And here's why I believe that to my core, because I know how I define success. If I can save one life, if I can help one young man, young woman, one family, that's far greater than any championship ring we've been blessed to win in the past and are aiming to win in the future. I just think it's powerful. And what I think we mess up as coaches is, and I'm guilty of this myself, I try every day to get better at it, having those deep conversations with our starters. And now I try as much as I can for that kid that's on the spectrum, the kid with special needs, the kid, whatever it is, the kid that might be that third string JV kid that can't put his helmet on straight. have those same conversations with them. A, because it blesses them, and B, maybe as equally as important, when those studs walk by and see me having that one-on-one time with that player, they know I'm not doing it for selfish gain. They know I'm not doing it just because, hey, he's talking to so and so because he wants him to play football and help us win a championship. They'll see me talking to so and so who may never be strong enough to carry the water bottle out there at halftime or whatever it is. So it's once again the relationships, truly caring about people, loving people. You're not going to have a losing season.
But Kurt, how do you? That's exhausting. Like it straight, that's exhausting when you're going through that stuff and you're doing everything for the right reasons. So one, it's exhausting. So how do you must sleep good at night?
Yep.
And what motivates the motivator? Who or what motivate? Like, okay, you're engaging for other people, but what engages you? What fires you up? Like who or what?
Great. Gosh, you just said so much there. It is exhausting, but man, I friggin' want to go to my grave exhausted than having a lot of fuel in the tank that I didn't use. I try every day when I get home before I hop on social media or whatever. Obviously, spend time with my wife and kids and whatever we're doing. But I try to text at least one player, and it might be, "Hey, Logan, phenomenal job today with the cleans. That was a young man." Or it might be, "Hey, so and so, we miss your workouts. Is everything okay? What can I do for you?" So that's one of the easy ways to build upon those face to face conversations. But who motivates me first and foremost is my faith. I truly know who I am and whose I am. And the more I focus on that, an old song, "Audience of One," not Rage Against the Machine, but the contemporary Christian song, "Audience of One," is just, man, if I can try to serve Christ and try to be as Christ-like as I can, I know I'm living a life worth living. That motivates me. And I had a new coach I just hired. I'm walking up to my coach's office about a half an hour before we hopped on, and I pulled a player aside and said, "Hey, can we talk in my office for a second?" I wanted to praise him for some stuff and ask him some questions. And then one of my new coaches said, "Coach, can we talk?" And my player's looking at me like, "I don't have that long, coach." And he knew I had this to go on. And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Sure, you go upstairs. I'll be there within 5 minutes." I said, "Coach, I got 4.5 minutes. What's up?" And he just started getting teary-eyed. Young man, probably 26, just came out of the Marines. He goes, "Coach, I went to a party last night. I was drinking and stuff. And the whole time I was there, I couldn't wait to come to practice." And he's like, "Thank you so much for it." And he has never coached before. I said, "Man," I said, that fuels me. That lights me on fire because here's a young coach. I don't know much about him yet. I met with him 3 times in the interview process, talking about life in the weight room and then talking a little bit of football. And he's been with us now for about a month and a half. And he cared enough to pull me aside and said, "I just want to thank you for having me on the staff." I mean, that's what gets me going. And I truly mean this, meeting guys like you, meeting other people that have the same mission, same passion for making a difference. That's what fuels me and gives me strength to know that. And I never thought I was alone in this world of doing this stuff, but knowing that there are other people out there that are fighting just as hard as Satan's fighting, just as hard as the people that are the keyboard warriors trying to spread hate. There are people out there that dedicate their lives to blessing and empowering other people.
Yeah, just ask our families, all 3 of our families.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's funny. I'll make this real quick. As far as our families, whenever I've been blessed to be a head coach, I make sure we never have coaches meetings on Sundays ever,
Yeah.
ever. And I've been made fun of for that. I've been ridiculed for that, judged for that, and I'm fine with all of that because I'm a firm believer you can be successful. I'm talking about the scoreboard now. You can have wins on the scoreboard and still have balance in your life with your families and never. I've coached with coaches before that brag about being, coaching widows during the season. My family knows, well, you know what? I've seen too many coaches lose their families after winning too many championship rings, lose their wedding ring because they prided themselves in, "Hey, this is how much I care about football." Well, if we're really trying to raise better young men and young women, let's teach them what balance looks like. Let's teach them what being a true man looks like, where you love your family first and foremost and you still pour into others. I'm getting preachy now, so I'll stop
No.
No,
there.
it's funny you say that. Sorry, Mark, I'm gonna jump in there. I'll
Yeah.
let you jump in after this because it hit a note with me. I was trying to progress my way through the baseball world, and well, I always am, but in the sense, and I was starting to surround myself with people that I was saying, "Man, that person's successful, and that person's successful," and then I have the conversations, right? And what I find out is single, divorced, third divorce, like, and I was just like, I'm not willing to go to that distance to get that job if that's what it's going to cost me, right? In that sense. So that's, for me, exactly like you got to find that balance and you true to yourself. And if that leads to something cool, and if it doesn't lead to something cool, because you know your why, your purpose, and who you want to surround yourself and what you want to do in the bigger picture. But it's funny, everybody wants everything else, but what are you willing to sacrifice for? And if it's not one of those things, then it's not worth sacrificing for.
Yeah, and how many people climb that ladder of success, get to the top to realize they've got the ladder against the wrong dang wall?
No, man. Or they're by
You know?
themselves, literally by themselves.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'd rather go somewhat far with my family in tow and then be proud of me and be part of that voyage. If I can't make them part of that voyage, I'm not going on it. Like it ain't gonna
Mark, what does
happen.
it go if you want to go
If you want
alone?
to go
Go
fast, go
fast, go
alone.
alone.
You
Yeah.
got it. You
Go
got
far,
it.
yeah. Sorry,
Go.
I love it.
See, Coach, I knew we would get along because I was like, oh man, I feel like it's just another bald guy coaching
Kindred
doing the same
spirits,
thing
yeah.
we're doing, which I love. I love. So you kind of teed this up with the idea of what motivates you and what keeps you driven and going. And I know we're being conscious of your time here, so I want to kind of start tidying this up for you. But I want to ask you, and we have coaches that listen, we have athletes that listen, we have business leaders that listen to our show, families. I want to know, like, what piece of advice would you want to leave somebody? We want to give our listeners, like, either the best advice you've ever gotten as a leader, or the best like book you've ever written or read as a leader. Where would you point people for something, a great resource in leadership?
Yeah, one of the greatest coaching books I've ever read is Inside Out Coaching by Joe Ehrman. It's I'm not sure if you guys have read it. It's more of an autobiography, or it is an autobiography about his life. The gentleman played at Syracuse, grew up playing basketball and lacrosse, I believe. Played lacrosse and football at Syracuse. Went on to the NFL for years, I believe, with the Colts. Um, but he, and I'll never forget it, says there are two types of coaches in all things: transactional, like a bank transaction. I'm going to pour into so and so because he's a stud. I'm going to get something from him in return, and that's the only reason I'm going to pour into him, like a bank transaction. And then there are transformational coaches that realize it's about transforming lives far more than anything else, just making a difference. And I think if you look at the sports world, from the youngest kids playing any sport to the best pros at any level, or any sport, it's about transformational coaching, changing lives along the way, using your sport as a platform to change lives.
I'm ready to go. I'm fired up. Our spring
Right?
camp's starting in a couple of weeks here, and I'm like, I just want to get at it. Like and I just want to go out and coach again now. Like
Yeah.
doing these conversations, and I don't think this is something that we do enough as coaches. I know there's different things out there, and we follow each other on Twitter and Instagram and stuff like that. But actually having these conversation amongst other coaches and sharing the stuff, that's the rich stuff that also enhances our own lives, right? So, which is really, really cool.
Yeah.
JG, anything else?
Waiting for the punchline to see if he's going to hammer it or not.
I'm
Here we go, Hines. Here we go.
What's
ready.
next? So how are the Islanders looking for this upcoming season? Are we excited?
I am amped up. I'm the eternal optimist. It hasn't failed me yet, but I'm always glasses half full, and who can I help, quench the thirst type of guy. Um, Good. We lost our starting quarterback. I had a young man that I taught in fourth grade, doesn't live on island. My wife and I live off island as well, but he was able to play here because his grandparents had a house, so he could, we weren't cutting any corners. It wasn't anything shady. He was able to play for us. Started for a varsity at quarterback as a freshman.
Well,
Started as a sophomore. We won league that year. Grandparents sold the house. He's gone. So right away, I'm like, all right, God, like I get it. Like here's the challenge. The greatest challenge here at Coronado is we have the North Island, which is the naval base, and
okay.
it's a blessing. It's not. It's a challenge because it's a revolving door of coaches and families and players that come and go. Where you might have a stud move in, and a year later he's gone. And
Gotcha.
sometimes, so that's a challenge. I've embraced it. It's helped me change my coaching. Where we talk about culture, we mentioned earlier on in the program. Culture for me, I never thought it was as simple as throwing a slogan on a gym wall or a T-shirt. I think that helps. Kids like it, they buy into it. But more than ever, I've understood that culture is a living, breathing organism. that has always got to be nurtured and built upon and pruned and all that stuff. But I'm excited. You know, I'm excited. Yeah, you just once again, you guys know this, but championships are built in the off season, and we've had a great off season so
Yeah.
far. Guys are buying in more than ever, and we start spring ball Monday, and I am so amped up because got some new faces showing up, and we got a lot of returning guys. We're a small program. When I was a head coach in New Hampshire, we had 144 players in our program, freshmen through seniors, and for New Hampshire, that was big. Not I, but we, after getting our teeth kicked in the first 2 years, built a powerhouse. And here at Coronado, we're still freshmen through seniors. Right now, I'm looking at my board. We're probably going to be about 60 deep. That's it. So we're small, but I'm loving it. We're going to be great, to answer your question.
One of these days when I retire from being in Canada and want to get away and get somewhere warmer, I may ask if you got a coaching. I'll sweep the sheds for you if you need me to.
The answer
Down
is
somewhere
yes.
warmer.
You're hired.
Yeah, but although we play with 12 guys here, with that.
I'll tell you, I always told people, I always thought I hated winter.
Yeah.
Winter is beautiful. It's 81 and beautiful right now. I was in the wrong part of the country, wrong part of the world. You know, I was in New Hampshire.
I was gonna say
the winter is 6.5, 7 months long.
Yeah.
So
that's amazing.
well, I love it.
We cannot wait to see. We're going to follow you, and we're going to follow the Islanders, and we're rooting for you all the way up here in Canada, and looking forward to the continued interaction. And JG,
Likewise,
we got to have him back.
There's Oh, that's a no-brainer.
I would love to. I would love to.
No-brainer.
This is amazing. Well, that does it for this episode of Benchmarked. Thanks for listening. Until next time.
Keep crushing it.
You did it.
Yes, sir.